before Hiroshima. There was a jungle soaked in blood and a battle that shattered Japan's invincibility. 4,000 Japanese soldiers lay dead. Their enemy? Not the Americans. Not the British. But a defiant force from a distant island, Australia. This is the brutal confrontation that shook the Pacific and dragged America into World War II. In 1941, the world was already deep in chaos. Europe was burning. Nazi Germany had invaded Poland, crushed France, and was bombing Britain from the skies. Millions were already dead. In Asia, Japan had been at war for years. They invaded China in 1937, leaving cities in ruins and civilians slaughtered. The Japanese army seemed unstoppable, taking territory after territory with brutal speed. By the start of 1942, Japan had its eyes on even more. They wanted control of the Pacific. That meant seizing islands, ports, and resources, especially oil, rubber, and metals. And it meant removing any country that could stand in their way. The British Empire was busy fighting in Europe. The Netherlands had been taken over by Germany. The French had surrendered. Only a few nations were left to resist Japan's rise. One of them was Australia. Australia was isolated, with a small army and limited defenses. Its people knew the danger. They were watching Japan's advance get closer and closer. Their closest ally, Britain, was too far away to help quickly. And the United States? Still on the sidelines. Americans didn't want to join another world war. They had stayed out of the fight, for now. But across the Pacific, Japan was making bold moves. It wasn't a question of if they would strike again. It was a question of where. And when. Japan's next move was bold and dangerous. They planned to take Port Moresby, a vital coastal town in Papua New Guinea. If they captured it, they could launch air attacks directly on northern Australia. The road to invasion would be wide open, but there was a problem. The only way to reach Port Moresby by land was through the Owen Stanley Range, a towering chain of mountains covered in thick jungle. And slicing through those mountains was a narrow, muddy trail, the Kokoda Track. It stretched over 90 kilometers. Steep, slippery, and full of danger. It twisted through deep valleys, climbed sharp ridges, and passed through some of the harshest terrain in the world. This wasn't just a path. It was a nightmare. In July 1942, Japanese troops landed on the northern coast of Papua New Guinea. Their goal: march over the mountains, capture Port Moresby, and break Australia's defenses. Waiting for them on the other side were young Australian soldiers, many barely out of school. They were poorly equipped, undertrained, and facing some of the most experienced fighters in the Japanese army. No tanks. No air support. Just rifles, boots, and guts. As the Japanese advanced up the trail, the Australians dug in. What followed wasn't a quick battle. It was a slow, grinding fight in the mud and mist. Insects bit. Rain poured. Men slipped, starved, and got sick. The jungle swallowed everything. This was no ordinary war. This was Kokoda, hell in the jungle. July 1942. Japanese troops land on Papua New Guinea's northern coast and begin pushing south, straight into the jungle. They expect a quick victory. After all, they're battle-hardened. Experienced. Ruthless. Waiting for them on the other side of the mountains? A scattered group of Australian militia. Many are barely out of high school. Undertrained. Under-equipped. Outnumbered. But not broken. What follows is one of the most grueling and savage campaigns of the entire war. The jungle becomes a living nightmare. Torrential rain. Razor-sharp ridges. Malaria. Leeches. Rotting feet. And death, everywhere. The Australians fall back. Again and again. But they never collapse. Every inch of the trail is fought over, with bayonets, fists, grenades, and sheer will. Japanese soldiers soon realize they aren't fighting colonials. they're fighting something else entirely. Soldiers willing to die to protect their homeland. As the weeks drag on, Japan's advance slows, then stalls. Then, the Australians counterattack. Against all odds, they push the Japanese back through the very terrain they once lost. Through jungle, ridge, and swamp, they reclaimed the Kokoda Track. Brutally. Relentlessly. By November, the campaign ends. 4,000 Japanese soldiers are dead. Thousands more are wounded, missing, or ravaged by disease. And for the first time, Imperial Japan has lost ground. Tokyo reels from the defeat. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not to them. The myth of Japanese invincibility, shattered. In Washington, military officials are watching closely. Up until now, Japan had steamrolled every opponent. But Kokoda proves something vital. Japan can be stopped. And the Pacific, with help, can be saved. America had already been tightening economic pressure on Japan. Now, they were preparing for war. Pearl Harbor was the final spark. But Kokoda was one of the warning shots. And it was loud. The Kokoda campaign wasn't just another battle. For Australia, it was something much bigger. It was the first time Australian soldiers fought without British command. No backup. No empire leading the charge. Just Australians, young. Scared, determined, standing alone. They weren't professional soldiers. Many had never left home before. But in the mud, the rain, and the chaos of the jungle, they became something more. They became a symbol of national strength. Kokoda showed the world, and showed Australians themselves, that they could survive without anyone's help. That they could fight. That they could win. The victory didn't just stop the Japanese. It changed how Australians saw their place in the world. Kokoda gave birth to a new identity. One built not on old ties to Britain, but on courage, sacrifice, and mateship. Today, Kokoda is remembered not just for its military importance, but for its meaning. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, bravery can shine. That when everything seems lost, a few determined people can still change the course of history. Kokoda built more than a defense. It built a nation. In the end, it was not just bombs or battleships that shaped the fate of the Pacific. It was also the mud-caked boots of ordinary men on a narrow jungle trail. The Kokoda campaign cost thousands of lives. But it proved that even the most brutal empire can be pushed back. That courage can bloom in the darkest places. And that sometimes, history turns not with a bang, but with a battle you were never taught in school.